On today's episode of Homeworthy, we're bringing you to the bucolic countryside of Tewksbury, New Jersey, for a look inside a magnificent home filled with 17th century antiquities, elegant sterling silver tableware sets, fine-tuned musical instruments, and so many more treasures. Enjoy! A big thank you to Factor for sponsoring today's Homeworthy episode. Hi everyone, I'm Allison Kenworthy, the founder of Homeworthy, and as you might be able to tell, I am very pregnant. These days, I don't have much time to cook, but eating nutritious meals is still very important to me. And that's why I love Factor, because you can choose from more than 34 fresh, never frozen meals that are ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Factor really couldn't be easier. It comes straight to your doorstep. I don't have to grocery shop, I don't have to prep, I don't have to clean up. It is so easy. Let's see what I have. Artichoke and spinach chicken, cacio pepe, I never know if I'm saying that right, herb cream cheese salmon, and guess what else I have? Cold pressed juice. Let's check these out. I think I'm gonna go with the cheesy bacon ranch shredded chicken. Let's do it. So head to factor75.com or click on the link below and use code HOMEWORTHY50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. Enjoy! Okay, this is delicious, and I'm gonna go eat off camera now. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. Like and subscribe for more.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Eric.
I'm Philip.
Welcome to our home in Tewksbury. Come on in. I'm Eric Lysdahl.
And I'm Philip Norekliuna. And we are in Tewksbury, New Jersey. A very beautiful bucolic area, famous for its equestrian community as well as the historic houses of the Somerset Hills. This was a beautiful place for families to build summer cottages in the late 19th century during the Gilded Age, because there was no air conditioning. And the mountain breezes provided a cool respite for a lot of the families who were working in Wall Street. And it was within commuting distance from New York, about 2 hours by train. So it's a lovely, quiet spot with lots of land and really unspoiled. We found this house in November of this year. So we're not in the house a year yet. I had sold an equestrian property that I wasn't really using and decided I wanted to stay in this really beautiful, gracious community. So we found this house. It was one of the few on the market that seemed to fit the art collection and some of our other collections of antiques.
Right.
And it had a really sort of classical arrangement that felt like a European manor house on the exterior. And on the interior, it had a European flavor as well. I believe a contractor who was from Germany built this house originally in 1999. So there are a lot of touches and details that harken back to a European home.
And we both had occupied period houses prior to this, and we were looking for a historical period house, and there was simply nothing on the market. So to find something newer that at least had some of the details and the bones and the layout that we were looking for, that was here we are, I guess.
Yeah, and we were lucky. We found a house with about 4,000 square feet with an enormous basement for our china. And glassware collection. We sort of have a passion for entertaining and accumulating.
We're not hoarders, but we could put Bergdorf's out of business.
It seemed perfect. We're on a mountain. We're actually on Hell Mountain in Tewksbury.
Yeah,
so we joked to our friends.
Hell, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we were from hell before, but now we can officially say we are. But the name Hell Mountain came about because of the Essex fox hunt out here. The mountain was very difficult to ride upon with all the rocks and hills.
I would say the bones of it are neoclassical. It has sort of a neoclassical European pavilion outline to it. But as far as the decoration is concerned, we were combining tastes because Philip has an extraordinary collection of art and antiques, and we wanted to showcase that, but wanted to bring it up to date and not be living in a merchant ivory set. So there have been some piece of modern art here and there and some updated finishes and textiles.
We tried to keep it relaxed, but also focusing on the...
Relaxed for us.
Well, so welcome to our entrance hall. It's a very light 2-story space. We decided to place 2 William Kent Eagle consoles here. I had these in my former home, Blairsden, on either side of the entrance to the ballroom, and they just have such presence and scale, and they're very grand, and they're looking at you as you enter the front door, and I thought they would be a good spot to place these Ming Dynasty terracotta attendants. And then we have these wonderful George III girandole mirrors from the end of the 18th century. They're really spectacular with the gilding that matches and the scale. And then Eric decided to put some wonderful orchids to give it more of a homey touch. And we also have a sofa that is part of New Jersey history. This belonged to Doris Duke and was in her entrance hall in her Somerville estate. And I like to think about Doris and Cary Grant and all the cast of characters that came through this area and probably sat on the sofa while they were waiting for their cars to arrive to take them home. Doris Duke was a famous tobacco heiress, and Duke University is named after the family, and she was a great philanthropist. And she also was a friend of my late partner. Our townhouse was 2 doors down from her townhouse, which is now at NYU Fine Arts. And she would ring our bell late at night, demand a cocktail, and complain about how her rose bushes were being cut down by NYU. But she was quite a character, and she is sadly missed. What I love about the double height entrance hall is that there is room for these 2 18th century French grisaille over doors. The theme here is music, and the theme here is literature. So I put music over the door to the salon and literature over the door to the dining room to encourage great conversation. Actually, we met...
we knew of each other for a long time.
We figured out that we met through eBay first because I had been collecting a rare porcelain pattern that only Eric had, and he sold me many pieces. Then we realized later when we were friends on Instagram recently that we had been living around the corner from each other in New York for over 15 years, and we still hadn't met. And it took eHarmony, of all things, to bring us together. And we had an incredible score of 130, and usually it's 90 or 100. So we spoke on the phone for 6 hours the first night.
And that's where we figured out we had similar friends in Paris and similar friends in London, and it was just, we liked all the same literature and music and you name it. It was a little strange. I woke up the next morning and I checked my phone to be sure I hadn't dreamed that I had the conversation. It was a little surreal.
And we had a great first date. We went to the Carlisle for lunch, which was our favorite place in the neighborhood. We used to go listen to Peter Minton play Bemelman's Bar back in the day, and then we went over to Doyle's for a viewing.
Yes, we went to an auction for a tabletop of all things, china and glass and silver. So we were definitely in our element right away.
Yes, we love the auctions too.
Yes.
And we love history, and we're both romantics, love the fine arts and all the history that these objects convey. And the craftsmanship. Eric is an amazing American silver collector, and I'm a European silver collector. So Eric brought quite a dowry to the relationship in terms of table settings. We keep it all in check. You know,
we like to entertain, and we like to entertain in a very similar style. So there are no fights there, right?
Yeah, I don't think we've had any fights yet.
This is our petit salon, and we have the grand salon behind it, but this is the most formal space of the house, and it has the most formal furnishings. So what we've done in this room is created a foundation with a cut pile geometric rug, and that informs the color scheme of the window treatments, which are just solid silk taffeta with a houllaise fringe. And we covered the walls in a silk wall covering from Philip Jeffries, and that's sort of informed by the costume in this wonderful portrait, which Philip will tell you about in a moment. But that sort of informed the palette for the silk on the walls. 1930s baguettes, sconces, these wonderful objects I'll have Philip expound about because they are quite important. And again, when I spoke about how we were incorporating some modernism, there's this wonderful asteroid rock crystal light fixture, and then we carry the rock crystal theme into the table lamps, which are actually a copy of a design that Coco Chanel used in her Ritz apartment in the 1930s. More 30s elements with these wonderful lacquered parchment chairs by Jacques Adnet, this contemporary sculpture on this Art Deco Palisandre pedestal. And then we have our mascot of the room here, which is this lovely Jean Lalande inspired sheep sculpture, which was a birthday gift to my very special partner this year.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I just adore French decorative arts, and this commode is one of the most important pieces in the collection. And this is a piece by Etienne Doirat, who was an eboniste in the beginning of the Régence period of France. These were made in pairs. The other half of this set is in the Wallace collection in London. And this is boule work, which means it's done in première partie and contrepartie. And this is the première partie piece. So the match would have the opposite. It would, where it's black, it would be pewter, and where it's pewter, it would be black, and it's inlaid with horn. Very important piece of its time. And then the clock is by a gentleman called Chambon, and he designed this clock for Marie Antoinette, and it became a very popular model. And it's also a musical clock. And for me, clocks are really time travel, because you can hear the sounds that people listened to in the 18th century. So that's sort of a fun sound to have in the house. And then I have a few important candlesticks by de Gourcq, and then this portrait by Claude Vignon from about 1620. And what's amazing about it is he did more religious paintings, really not so many portraits. And I particularly love this portrait because of the costume and the depiction of the hands and the feathers. It's really over the top. And the facial expression is very intriguing. So it's sort of an homage to French decorative arts. These are presse-papier that belong to Madame de Pompadour. And then you have some wonderful Blue John Brûle parfum that look wonderful when you light candles inside. They sort of glow and are very magical.
We're auction junkies and have been collecting our whole lives, really.
We go to Paris. We love the auctions at Drouot. And also...
And the Marché aux Puces at Clignancourt, of course.
Yes.
No trip to Paris would be complete without that.
And of course, the Golden Nugget Antique Market here in Lambertville, New Jersey. You never know what treasures you'll find.
The good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Interestingly enough, what Philip and I discovered as we got to know each other is we both had this penchant for drawing over-the-top castles and palaces and interiors, scribbling away in our notebooks while we were in grammar school. So we shared that. I didn't know what an interior designer was when I was in grammar school, but I knew that I liked drawing houses and interiors, and it just sort of evolved, and I came to New York to study fashion, brief career in fashion and public relations, and it was through PR. I worked with the oldest decorating firm in New York called Macmillan Inc., and that was founded by Eleanor Macmillan Brown, and that was my introductory experience to the highest level of New York City interior decorating. And as I was working with them doing public relations, I was living vicariously, and I came to the conclusion that that's what I wanted to do. So I went back to school for it in my mid-20s, and my first job was with Bunny Williams, and that was an extraordinary experience and an extraordinary talent pool of other people there. And I call it my finishing school. I probably learned more in the first 2 months there than I did in 2 years of design school.
So I began my career in historic preservation of architecture back in 1995, and my late partner and I had a foundation called the Foundation for Classical Architecture, which was set up to preserve important houses from the late Beaux-Arts period in the United States. And I had two wonderful projects. One was a Stanford White townhouse on Fifth Avenue, not far from Eric all those years. And another one was a house out here in Peapack Far Hills called Blairston by Carrere and Hastings, 1903. And it was a beautiful Louis XIII style chateau that had been a convent for a number of years before we purchased it. And that was a great project to bring it back to life as a country house again. And I love the area so much that I wanted to go into real estate. So recently I obtained my New Jersey real estate license, and I'm working with a wonderful company called Turpin Realty. They've been established in the community since the 1960s, over 3 generations of service to the community and providing them wonderful opportunities to purchase homes and support the preservation of the great estates in this area.
And you introduced me to this area because I'd never spent any time here. I didn't know anything about the history of it. So really a wonderful place to land.
Well, I call it Brigadoon because when I came out in 2002, people were still wearing black tie to private dinner parties and playing bridge after dinner. And there's the Tewksbury basset hounds that go out in the fall and winter, and there's also the Essex fox hunt. It's really a place that time forgot in certain ways, and it's a very polite and gracious community.
It is.
Yeah, so we couldn't have landed in a more perfect spot.
So to discuss the decor of the dining room, I'll let Philip elaborate on the silver collection, but I want to talk a moment about the room and what some of the aesthetic choices were here, because we were dealing with some very important furniture and objects, and I wanted to tone it down and bring it a little down to earth. Philip was ready to kill me because I banished all the oriental rugs that he had from the last house, and in order to lighten this room with this very formal furniture, we selected this geometric pattern sisal for the floor, and as you see, all the legs of the furniture really pop off of it. The dining chairs were formerly in the collection of Hubert de Givenchy in his Paris apartment, so we're very lucky to have those. And instead of a traditional crystal chandelier, we opted for this Kelly Wearstler modern Strata chandelier. It's got a wonderful matte gold finish, and it's a sculptural element that's unexpected with all this traditional furniture. And then the walls are covered in a seagrass wallpaper, and the ceiling was decorative painted in a mottled gold. And then we did have a nod with the window treatments, a little bit more formal with these mahogany poles and these lovely gilt flesh finials on them.
The dining room is truly my favorite room in the house because it allows me to display a collection of 18th century English silver that I've accumulated over the years. And my favorite artisan is Paul Storr. So the table is set with an entire cutlery, plate, and covered vegetable and a Perrin collection, all by Paul Storr. The flatware is really amazing. It's called the Stag Hunt pattern, and you can see this sort of homage to Louis XIV with the Roi de Soleil sort of figure on the back of the shell. I also have a collection here of other English silversmiths. This is a vinaigrette made by Crespin, And the weight is incredible. It's about almost 10 kilos. And I have these vegetable dishes by Hennel and these tea caddies by Romer in the chinoiserie pattern, which are really fun. As you know, tea was one of the most expensive commodities of the 18th century, and these are such beautiful storage containers for them. I have a collection of platters by Paul Storr, which originally belonged to Chateau Groussailles, Charles de Bestéguy. And these candlesticks are by Parker and Wakeland from the 1740s. And what I really love about English silver and its chasing is how it catches candlelight. When the room is all lit with candles, all of the silver sparkles, and it's like jewelry. And the craftsmanship is unlike anything you can find today. What are we having for dinner? Well, I still serve a soup course, which isn't very popular, but I still love to use the silver soup dishes that I have that match this Paul service. And the wonderful thing about silver plates and bowls is that they don't chip. Right. So
they dent and they scratch.
Yeah. But we'll have usually a vichyssoise. Yeah. Sometimes I'll do a fish course with a champagne sauce. With some caviar, and then we'll go on to a meat course, usually a filet mignon, again with a nice béarnaise. We'll have a cheese and fruit course, and then we'll have some kind of wonderful dessert. Eric is a very good chef and also makes a flan to die for.
I'm a sweet hound. And then that's followed by tea and coffee, and we have this modern, if you will, service. It's designed by a silversmith named Georges Leconte, and it's quite rare. I've only seen one or two others of its kind. It has a very subtle hammered finish called martelet, and this was retailed by a famous Paris jeweler called Carré.
We love chinoiserie and we love Amari porcelain, especially plates from the 19th century, and these were just over the top, beautiful gadrooning, harkening back to the 18th century. And a lot of our other silver meat services are of this gadroon pattern, so it all seemed to work.
And we found them at auction on our first date. So,
yeah, Doyle.
Yeah,
Doyle. So we try and mix up the 18th century, 17th century art with contemporary art. And I was in India at a contemporary art fair in Delhi and saw this work by a Latvian contemporary artist called Arbidane. And I'm half Lithuanian, I have Lithuanian citizenship, and I connected with the painting and the artist immediately. I also love collecting old master Dutch paintings, and this harkens back to that sort of Dutch master idea of focusing on the treatment of the tulips and the fruit. And there's so much going on in this painting with different allegories. It's very erotic. This painting is called Sleeping Beauty. There's a Salvador Dali sort of homage with the lobster on her chest. And then there's raw oysters. There's a cat about to eat the shrimp. There are flies. There's a parrot. Salamanders. It's a very sort of erotic, evocative sort of painting that does prompt a lot of interest and discussion at dinner. And it's appropriate for a dining room with all of the fruit and the flowers. And the Arbidane contemporary work has a dialogue with this old master painting by de Kooning. And here again, we have a monkey and a dog and music and wonderful fruit and some game and a parrot. It's just a sort of celebration of culture and food, very appropriate for a dining room.
Well, we've shown you the more formal sitting room, but this is really where we spend our time on a day-to-day basis, mainly because there's a television here, but we do read, there are books, and there is a fireplace in here, and there's a whole story to this because the mantle that came with the original house was tragic, and it had to go. It was the one thing we both agreed immediately had to be changed. So we looked at mantelpieces in Europe, and then there was the logistics of it, and the one that we wanted arrived broken, and then we ended up going to a place in upstate New York that had wonderful reproduction mantles, and we thought this was restrained enough, but over the top enough. And the stone worked with things that we already had, such as the oriental rug and the mohair sofas and the Brunswick chairs. So this was actually a great purchase and a really a game changer for the room. These boxes are by an unknown foundry, but they were made in Berlin in the 1830s, and there's something called Berlin iron, which is highly collectible, strong neoclassical lines. We also have this collection of Bohemian spa glasses and caskets, and there's a ewer and wonderful goblets and compotes there. These are all basically from the 1840s through the 1870s, and they were sold as souvenirs at luxury spas in Germany and Austria. And so we have a collection of that on this wonderful Paul Storr platter, a salver, I think it's called.
I would love to talk more about this painting that I really love. It's contemporary artist Hudson, and it's something I found in Provincetown a few years ago, and I love it. I love the late Queen and the example she led through her life, and it seemed to work with the colors of the room also, and other items on the fireplace that are really interesting. There's a set of candelabra that belonged to Napoleon, and they were on his desk at Malmaison. And also this wonderful European Grand Tour statue of Laocoon, which is just full of tension and beauty. And then we found these wonderful Viennese bronze busts that, again, harken back to the beard theme of Laocoon and also the owners of the house. We also have this vignette that Eric created with the blue and white. The painting is by Renaissance artist Frau Filippo Lippi, and the sconces are Louis XIV. The clock is a buhl clock that formerly was in the Rothschild collection, the Viennese Austrian Rothschilds, and this clock was confiscated during the war and was returned to them in the 1990s. So that was a purchase to help re-endow the family fortune. The desk is called a Bureau Mazarin, and this is a piece by Charles-André Boulle, who was Louis XIV's cabinet maker, who also had the right to cast bronzes and did wonderful bronze chandeliers and ormolu. One of the few artisans in France who was allowed to make everything for the piece. The guild system was so strict in France that people were only allowed to cast bronze, and then you had to buy the bronzes from someone to put on the piece that you were making, and you had to have an eboniste do the inlay work on the piece itself. So usually 5 or 6 master craftsmen worked on one piece of French furniture. Charles-André Boulle had the right to make all of the components and assemble the pieces for himself, and he was Louis XIV's favorite cabinet maker. So one of our favorite things to do for entertaining is to have an after-dinner concert. And I have this 1924 Steinway D that belonged to a very famous Harlem pianist called Hazel Scott. She was the wife of Adam Clayton Powell, and she used this piano in all of her movies in the 1940s and 50s. She did lots of cameo appearances in Bob Hope movies, and she was very talented. She could also play 2 pianos at once. And this piano was her personal one. So we bought this piano at auction many years ago, and I had it fully restored. The problem when we bought the house was where to put it. And so this was a breakfast room, which we converted into the piano room. And eventually we're going to put a screen to mask the kitchen with maybe sliding doors that can open and close to sort of keep this area more formal for concerts. But I play like Edith Bunker. I just warn you in advance, but I'd like to play for you really quickly so you have an idea of what the sound of the piano is. rusty, but it has an amazing bass and treble. And then we have the player piano collection. This is kind of fun. This is a 1911 Aeolian player piano. And this is the hot spot at the end of the parties. We do a lot of karaoke and sing-alongs and a lot of Broadway show tunes, and it gets really fun. What's great is that the words and lyrics are on the side of the music, so you can sing along with it. One of our other favorite rooms in the house is the kitchen. This is really where we spend all of our mornings. I found this oak table at an auction from a house on the main line in Philadelphia. And we love to do what are called kitchen suppers here in the neighborhood. It's very casual. I'm cooking at the stove, so is Eric. You know, it's very relaxed. I don't have the staff here for the more formal dinners in the dining room, so it's even more relaxed and fun. And I've set the table for a dinner using this French faience by Caillot and Longchamp. The chairs are Italian, again, Rococo style. The lantern is, again, Louis XV style with mice and flowers. This used to hang in my ladies' reception room at Blairsden. And I've tried to tie in sort of Louis XV, Louis XV motifs on the table. This is my grandmother's silver pattern, which is Louis XV by Whiting. And I just love the shell at the end of it. I have some amethyst colored pieces to pick up the purple in the plates, and the placemats pick up the blue. These amethyst colored bread and butter dishes are from the 1820s. And these wine glasses are from the late 18th century. And I have to say, I was inspired by these glasses when I saw them. They reminded me of a special I saw when I was younger that Martha Stewart had done for Thanksgiving at Turkey Hill. And she went into her butler's pantry and announced that she would be using her amethyst 18th century glasses with her 18th century spode. And I love that video. It was very inspiring. And Martha, here's a little homage to you. Then I found these glasses in New York, which are really heavy and beautiful. They're late 19th century Bohemian with etched stags on them. And there are a lot of deer in the neighborhood. And then we have a lot of pheasant in the area. So I have these wonderful birds and pheasants from Pierre Deux from many years ago. And my favorite piece on the table is this magnificent terrine from Strasbourg. And the painting is just sublime. It's very fine and brings in more blues. And I think it was Dorothy Draper who said that a room without red is like a lady without lipstick. So I try and have just a little bit of red here and there to sort of highlight things.
We'd like to take you to our outdoor entertaining space, if you'll come with me. We have this wonderful little gazebo that's perfect for small gatherings of 4 to 6 people, and we have this set up for a lunch for 4. And the table setting includes some wonderful Italian Millefiori water tumblers and these beautiful 1830s English sort of arsenic green glass sweet dishes. If you look closely at the table setting here, the flatware is a rare pattern of American coin silver by a silversmith called William Gale, and he was the first silversmith to introduce mass-produced flatware, and he changed the silver industry. But this particular pattern, the Gothic motif, was only produced for about 15 years or so, from the late 1840s to about the outbreak of the Civil War. It's actually considered the rarest American coin silver pattern. And we sort of repeat that in these Gothic pressed crystal goblets, which are made from a 1840s baccarat mold. And we've paired that with what is probably one of my favorite patterns that Philip has collected. It's called Ye Old Willow by Crown Staffordshire, and it was retailed by Tiffany and Company in New York. And with the place settings of the cutlery, silver knives were not common until about the 1870s. They existed, but they were not quite common. And so this pattern is so rare, the knives are virtually extinct. So we paired these with wonderful lapis-handled knives that have steel blades. These were made in France by a company that's owned by Erquy. And the chandelier is a recent find from our favorite haunt in Lambertville, New Jersey. And we installed that out here to replace a rather unfortunate looking lantern that was here previously.
So this is the entrance to Hollyhurst, and we named the property Hollyhurst because of these magnificent holly trees and holly bushes throughout the property. When we arrived in November, we realized that a lot of the boxwood was suffering from blight, but we've been replacing it with a new kind of holly that looks like boxwood. So that's our project for the next year. But we wanted to wait until we had the house for one growing season. We've only been here since last November, and it's been interesting to see what has survived and what came back, as the house had been rather neglected. A lot of wonderful hydrangeas are in the garden, and this wall of hydrangeas came out and is so beautiful. It's a wall of white, and the honeybees in the area love it very much. And then the roses did well this year, and I did have to plant some herbs. So I put in some basil and rosemary and some tomatoes, and everything seemed to do well. The soil is rather poor on Hell Mountain. It's very rocky, so some trees that I planted didn't really work out, but I tried to put in some fruit trees, as my Lithuanian relatives have in Kaunas. It's nice to go in the garden and pick fresh plums and peaches in season. And New Jersey is famous for its peaches and tomatoes. But it's a simple parterre garden, a work in progress still. Yeah. It's still a work in progress, of course, the first season, but the herbs did well and the strawberries did well, and I put in some peonies and more roses, and it's wonderful. It has a nice European feel, I thought. And we have this smaller terrace near the gazebo for cocktails in the evening. And it's sort of fun to sort of be here in the forest. Occasionally I do see a bear walk by on the other side of the bear fence. But it's exciting. There's great wildlife out here. We have foxes, we have deer, coyotes, and I think we even have some mountain lions. Haven't seen those yet. I would say my favorite thing about the house is that it's spacious. Everything has room to breathe. It's very light and airy. I love the forest location, especially because we can open the French doors on the ground floor and just let the breezes come through the house. It's an entertaining house, which is really important for us.
I think we inspire each other.
Yeah,
Yeah?
that's very sweet.
Oh.
Yeah. Who and what inspires me? I would have to say so many of the, besides Eric, of course, as a designer, some of the other great designers. I'm a huge fan of Jacques Garcia. I'm a huge fan of Juan Pablo Molineux back in the day, and Alberto Pinto was amazing. I would also have to say Joseph Ashkar and Michel Charrière. who do amazing work in Paris with interiors, with period paneling and furniture. They've just done this amazing project at the Hôtel de la Marine in Paris.
So through here, we have one of the guest bedrooms. And this, we combine some of the classic 18th century French furniture with a chinoiserie motif. This is a beautiful wallpaper by Brunswick and Fee. It's made in England, and it's based on an 18th century design with pagodas. And we sort of have an inverted pagoda chandelier from John Roselli, which is done in this wonderful hand-painted faux tortoiseshell finish. And that sort of just ties in with the bamboo blinds that are above the French doors. And then went with very simple linen curtains and bed hangings here over the bed. This wonderful bed was made in Paris by a company called Linke in the 1890s, and you have a beautiful urn here in the center, this wonderful center medallion, and then the treillage motif on the sides, and then ormolu on it, of course. Impossible to find a ciel de lit to create the bed hanging, so that was actually a home project here where I found a simple white one online and then painted it faux bois to give it a little bit of the flair of the period. And the bed made with just simple beige and white linens. I call this the bunny bed. Well, I don't call it. It was actually, I was taught this when I worked at Bunny Williams. The first installation I ever participated in was a home in the Hamptons. And one of the people in the office said, "Are you good at making beds?" I said, "Relatively, do you know how to make a bunny bed?" I said, "What is a bunny bed?" So apparently this was the preferred way Bunny Williams makes up a bed, where the standard pillows are stacked like bricks on top of each other behind. The Euroshams are standing upright in front of them, and then the boudoir pillows in there. So that was one of my first aesthetic lessons at Bunny Williams in terms of doing an installation. So funny enough, I'm brainwashed, and that's how I make every bed to this day. And then in this wonderful secrétaire à battant, I'm going to lift the lid so you can see the wonderful marquetry on there and all the book matching of the veneers. Inside we have a full orchestra of Meissen porcelain monkeys. Those are all hand painted, 18th century. And then the monkey theme is carried up into this wonderful 19th century porcelain piece with the monkeys on board. And chinoiserie again, wonderful Chinese export, 18th century reverse painted glass depicting a domestic scene. And these incredible candlesticks that are also 18th century. They are Kangxi porcelain figures, and they're set on gilt bronze or ormolu mounts with cloisonné bobèche on them. And then we have another extraordinary pair of sticks over here. They're actually candelabrum. These are 18th century Meissen, and the figures were done by the premier figure maker of the day for Meissen, Candler, and they're wonderful painting. And then on the wall above, we have this 1920s scene of Place Madeleine. We are both Francophiles, obviously, and spend a lot of time in Paris, so that is a very familiar scene to us, and that was done by a painter called Grisson in the 1920s. And again, 18th century commode and some miniature bergères flanking it, and then this wonderful green tortoiseshell bouillotte clock.
Oh, well, accidents do happen, but this is not a real accident. This was a prank that my friend, the late Mario Bawada, made at one of my parties a few years ago he was a character. He did naughty things. He used to put rubber cockroaches in salads at people's dinner parties too. And actually, he took one of my silver gilt dessert spoons and put it in the purse of one of our lady guests, and she was horrified to take out her makeup and see it was there. He was great. Miss him very much. So now we're going upstairs, and what I liked about this house was that it was a very wide staircase, and it allowed me to display some of my favorite paintings from the Hudson River School. My favorite painting of all of them is this view from Olana in Hudson, New York, by the artist Storr. And I also have a local artist, Nick Casano, who's a great chef and architect in the area, and he painted this beautiful sunset in the smaller frame. At the top of the stairs, we have another great portrait in the house. This is by Hudson of George Hunt, and it's one of my favorites because he's just back from his European tour in the 18th century, and he's holding one of these wonderful Venetian masks. Very, very well done. And as we come up the staircase, another time travel piece, this beautiful clock by Yeardley Norton from the 1750s. It's a musical clock. It plays 5 different airs.
So this instrument was made in America, partly. The case was made by a Paris workshop of David Jacquet, and the rest of it assembled by Zuckerman Harpsichords in Stone, Connecticut. And this instrument I bought over 20 years ago. I was young, living in Manhattan, no money, walk-up apartment, but I had to have this instrument, and I sort of call it my Porsche because that's what I could have bought instead of the harpsichord. And it's something that I always wanted. I had a smaller instrument before that it didn't have the sound or the capability. Again, we're both musicians, we both had instruments, and I had this harpsichord, so it was a question of where is it going to go? I didn't want it in one of the major sitting rooms because then it starts looking too period piece, and I wanted it somewhere where you'd have some resonance. So the second floor landing with this gallery over the foyer is perfect because we could always have a couple of other instrumentalists here and do a little ensemble to play for guests. So I'll indulge you with a brief bit of my playing, such as it is, and here we go. That's all you're going to get. So I'm going to take you into one more sitting room that we have on the second floor. It's just off of our master bedroom. And this is sort of my little personal study office, and incorporated a couple pieces of buhl at either end mirroring each other. These are brass inlaid 18th century buhl pieces. We have this Mazarin desk and this commode, and above each there's a matched pair of George II English pier glasses, which have the original mirror in it. So you get all the imperfections and all the age marks related to that. And they are facing each other, mirroring the room. Got a wonderful window seat here between the closets, and what I did was I incorporated the same chinoiserie pattern window treatment, this wonderful silk that's no longer made, and incorporated that in the seat, and cushions here that match the sofa, the curtains here that match, and the chinoiserie silk. So the choice of wall covering was up for debate because I wanted stripes. There was a very specific green on green palette that I had seen in a house in England called Bridwell Park. It's owned by Ivor Mountbatten. It's his study, if you will, his library. And it's this exact same scale and palette. And I had to have it. There's no paper made like it. So I had to paint the walls myself. So painted a ground color and the lighter, and then taped all the stripes out and painted the darker. So this was another do-it-yourself project that we had. And Philip was puzzled as I did it, but when he saw the end result, he was quite pleased with it. And here I've got a sofa that I designed. It's called the Blenheim Settee, and I named it after Blenheim Palace in England, which was the ancestral home of one of my early mentors, Lady Henrietta Spencer Churchill. And there it is. This has been in several incarnations in several homes. So now in this green antique velvet and flanked by those great Ralph Lauren library lamps. And then the paintings that you see on either side, which are sort of uncharacteristic to the rest of the room, but these are contemporary, and they're by an artist friend of mine named Brian Tull, who's actually a sculptor. He's known for large-scale public works, probably best known for the Hunger Memorial in Battery Park in New York City. And these are a pair of paintings that he did for me many years ago, and they were a personal gift, and I will treasure them until the day I die. So those are featured here to give a little modernity to the room. And likewise, these wonderful gilt chairs, they are by probably one of the greatest designers of the 20th century, Angelo D'Anghia. So this is his Grand Soleil chair. It's kind of an homage to a French fauteuil and this sort of sunburst carving. And then this is upholstered in a wonderful raised cut velvet, which is very graphic and very geometric, and it lends a little modernity to the room. And then with all the opulent furniture and gilt chairs, decided to tone it down with this very humble seagrass rug. And I love the basket weave motif of the seagrass. And then I introduced a whimsical touch with this coffee table made in the 1930s. And this is all reverse painted glass. And there's a chinoiserie motif in the center as well. So again, wonderful French furniture pieces that were involved, but we wanted to pare it down without ignoring it entirely. So I found this contemporary made campaign bed, which has a French 18th century flair to it. And now my wonderful partner will tell us about the fabulous antique pieces of furniture in here. But there was an aesthetic decision. We had a pair of benches in front of this bed, and they just didn't work. And this marvelous console did not have a place in the house, and it really needed to be seen. And I just came up with the idea one day that it should go at the foot of the bed, because this is where our coffee tray can sit when we have our morning café au lait on a weekend.
Well, it was a piece that's really over the top. It's really hard to sort of put it in an interior because it's very dominant, but it's a very famous table by a French Regence maker called Pinot. And it's been published several times, and it's really over the top, but with the gilding, we thought we'd put it in the bedroom, create a fantasy bedroom, and it does seem to work. Other pieces in the room, this is a really important commode by Henri Lysdahl, and I have a 18th century portrait by Pillemont over it, and these were some other pieces from my past wonderful French Empire candelabra, and then this very cute what's called a poudreuse by the maker Topino, and mahogany furniture. The reason why these two pieces are really unadorned with ormolu is that mahogany was such a rare wood when it first was discovered. People were fainting that when Marie Antoinette put a floor in her boudoir at Fontainebleau of plain mahogany. And so the wood was so rare, they didn't want to cover it up with heavy ormolu. So this is a very, very restrained, chic piece by Topino. And I've covered it with some French sticks. And the chairs, the fauteuil is a suite of 8 by royal chairmaker Georges Jacob. to the court of Versailles. And so these parcel gilt chairs had a wonderful blue covering. To bring up Mario Boata again, he really liked how these were done, and I never wanted to reupholster them after he complimented them. I have a center table here where we also keep drinks and trays, and views of the garden, and again, bringing in a little more chinoiserie into the room. We have these reverse glass paintings. So what I also love about the house is that there are these sort of long private passages, and this one leads to my library study. And I've done the walls with 17th century, 15th century engravings. Some are by Alba Devar, and also there's a Rembrandt self-portrait, and then some etchings inspired by Sir Anthony van Dyck. And this really is the back stair, but again, it's just as large as the main stair. And it was one of the few places where I could hang this early 16th century tapestry of the Trojan War. It's Flemish, and I was a classical theater minor in college, and loved Homer and the classics, and the Iliad especially. So we have a scene here with Paris and Helen fleeing together. And what I also love about the tapestry is the colors that remain vibrant and fresh as the day they were woven. A lot of tapestries fade, and this is in remarkable condition. There is sort of an Adam and Eve, almost a bacchanalian theme of fruits and lovers entwined together. So this is really celebrating great passion and great love. So welcome to my library study. It's the longest room in the house at the end of the second floor. And I've been able to amass a collection of my favorite personal books, as well as bring in some favorite pieces of furniture. I also collect antique victrolas from 1910 through 1930. So I use this as a listening room for my collection of early Metropolitan Opera records and historic classical musicians. I also have some vaudeville and some great early jazz too. It's fun to listen in this room. I have some wonderful French fauteuil in this razor-cut velvet chrysanthemum pattern silk, and beautiful Art Deco desk covered with Russian lacquer collections that I've been putting together. I love this color yellow. This lampshade came from one of the last surviving pieces of Quezel glass, similar to Tiffany glass, from the 1900 time period, and I restored it, and it provides great light in the room. And I can also listen to some of my other favorite phonographs. This is a 1905 Edison phonograph, and the best piece in the collection is this 1925 orthophonic Victrola, and I'll let you hear a little bit of the past on this one. This piece is called Gay Love, Foxtrot, by Leo Reisman and his orchestra, and this is one of the more important early electrical recordings of the time. Home for me is really where Eric is. I've had a love affair with many historic houses in my time that I've enjoyed, but it never really felt like home unless I was able to share it with someone. So we're starting a new chapter after 1 year, and very happy to have discovered so many things that we enjoy doing together, and it's been joyful.
Home is about the people in it. It's the people who inhabit it. It's about the love that is experienced in a dwelling. That's what makes a home. The rest of it is just dressing. I mean, the rest of it is furniture and collections and whatever you have around you, including the the dust and grime and dog hair and whatever makes up your life. That's what home should be.
Yeah, I'm fortunate to have my sister's family close by, about half an hour away, and not only does the house come alive when we entertain, our friends, but when my sister's family come out, it's just wonderful.
Right,
Grandchildren
3
play.
generations here.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
Thanks for watching. For more Homeworthy content, be sure to like and subscribe.